The last unit of this module on learning as a social process discusses some policy issues having to do with the diversity issue within the domain of higher education. I already explained that I've been a policy advisor at Vrije Universiteit Amsterdam to the board, the university board, and have, of course, in that function become acquainted with the issue of cultural diversity, as the Vrije Universiteit has an input of 30% culturally diverse students, like the Erasmus Universiteit. So I would like to discuss these issues and then proceed to introduce the theme of excellency and talent in higher education by introducing some research which has been done to find out what kind of people talented students in honors programs are, and how talent is developed during secondary school, basically. Okay, first the issue of cultural diversity. Of course, you can make a distinction between various types of diversity, is just to give you an idea of the broad character of this concept. You can talk about culture, about religion, about nationality, about prior education, about cognitive abilities, about motivation, etc., etc. All these dimensions are relevant as we talk about a diverse student population. You can talk about students, of course, and you can use the same dimensions to talk about the diversity of teachers. And there may be, some resemblance between the students' diversity and the teachers' diversity, or it may not be there, which may cause some troubles when students do not easily recognize their own characteristics in their teachers. Of course, you can also make a distinction between universities, universities with a research task, or universities with a teaching task. In the Netherlands, you can make the distinction between universities aiming at preparing for a professional career, the universities of applied sciences, the HBO-instellingen. In England and other countries formerly named as the polytechnics, and the universities which have, let's say, a tradition as a research university in the Netherlands, so the old-fashioned 12 universities. So that's also a distinction, and the Veerman report perhaps, which makes this an issue and starts to discuss whether we should, let's say, better proliferate, make more characteristics visible of universities to see their differences and to make use of their differences as well. And of course, you can apply this concept to society at large and talk about the homogeneity or the heterogeneity of society, the availability of various values, the value as such of different values and cultures, etc. So it's a very complex and broad concept, diversity. A few words about diversity and differentiation in education. When you talk about differentiation in education, you basically mean to say that various subgroups of students are treated in a differentiated way. So they are homogeneous in their subgroup and are not connected to other subgroups and get a special treatment as, for instance, the talented students or the students with special needs or whatever kind of distinction you are going to make. So that is differentiation. Providing different education for different subgroups. Whereas diversity means that the group as a whole has diverse values and is interdependent in Levin's sense, and the behavior of one group influences the behavior of other groups, etc. That is diversity, and that's distinct from differentiation. Okay, the concept. Now, a bit of discussion about the meaning, the policy issue, the meaning of diversity and the value of diversity in higher education. Often teachers complain about, the possibility that standards are lowered by having various students with various cultural backgrounds within the walls of the university. Chris Brink used to be rector of Newcastle University, and before that he worked in South Africa. And he made a speech in 2007 when he was acting as a rector in Newcastle, in which he tried to explore the task and the purpose of universities in a society. What are universities for? And there he makes a distinction between two tasks, in fact, providing knowledge and preparing students for their professional career. Providing knowledge might be thought of as something like supplying knowledge in the Plato sense, that it comes from outside and it is delivered to society. Whereas preparing students and working in collaboration with society is more the Aristotle way of looking at the tasks of universities, in which knowledge is actually collected by collaborating with society. Now, what Brink is emphasizing is that both ways of knowledge development, supply and demand, as he calls it, Plato and Aristotle, are relevant for the university, and therefore he emphasizes that the university should provide knowledge for life, so knowledge in relation to society. And that makes it relevant to have a cultural diverse student population, perhaps even a teacher and researcher population, because that reflects the composition of society in which universities are working. That's also what Silvia Hurtado is emphasizing, a former president of the American Educational Research Association. She's also talking about the civic missions of universities, and she emphasizes that universities should be a mirror of society. So within the walls of the university, students should encounter the same issues which they are going to have to deal with when they start their professional career in society. So the university is sort of playground in which these values are already present, in which you can, let's say, experiment with all kinds of ways of collaboration or joint group problem solving or whatever, learning in a social context. And these experiments in this playground situation all contribute to your preparation as a professional in society. So these are both, I think, pleas for valuing the diversity in higher education. Okay. Now two short explorations in the issue of excellent students in higher education. First, characteristics of excellent students. Interesting research being done by the colleagues of Utrecht University, Karin Skager, Sanne Akkerman, nowadays at Leiden University, by the way, and other colleagues from Utrecht University. They did a lot of work on identifying characteristics of excellent students. For instance, as Karin Skager did by comparing 1,100 students working in honors programs and regular students not in honors programs at Utrecht University, on comparing these two groups on 6 characteristics: intelligence, creative thinking, openness to experience, the desire to learn, persistence, and the drive to excel. You might expect that intelligence is a major discriminator between higher honors students and regular students, but it turned out not to be the case. So intelligence was not a major distinction. Neither was persistence as the motivator, but creative thinking was really a discriminating characteristics. So higher honor students showed higher levels of creativity than regular students, showed higher levels of desire to learn as regular students, and showed higher drives to excel as compared with regular students at Utrecht University. Which is interesting if we combine these findings with the findings of Annedien Pullen we were discussing shortly. Because Anadine found that creativity does contribute to the motivation to collaborate and to positively evaluate tasks in which students have to collaborate or work on group products. So in this combination, you might expect that honor students might even have a more positive view on collaborating in group problem-solving tasks than regular students because of the important influence of creativity. Okay, so interesting findings, I think, useful in thinking about how to deal with honor students and whether it's necessary and beneficial to offer them special programs. Then the last topic in this module is about the development of talent. In fact, this is work done by Eriksson and Krampe and Tesh Römer, famous work already in the 90s of the last century on the issue of deliberate practice. So whenever you are involved in such an area in which you study practice schedules and all kinds of practice issues, then this paper is really a thing to discuss. Deliberate practice, and we talk about the quantity and quality. The paper was published in the Psychological Review in 1993. Let's first talk a bit about quantity. What the German authors did was they compared the practice histories of various groups of professionals, in this case violinists. So they asked how many hours they had practiced during their secondary school years, their teenager years, and they asked this question to middle-aged violinists, to students, violinists working at the conservatory in Berlin, working on a career as a soloist, the best violinist, and students working on a career as ensemble players playing in an orchestra, the good violinist, or students working preparing for a career as music teacher. And as you can see here, that the best students, so working for the solo career, and also the professionals, showed the highest rates of accumulated practice hours during secondary school. So they made a lot of hours practicing when they were school kids in secondary school. And that is a preparation that made them to this high level of performance either during the conservatory years or as a middle-aged violinist. So practice makes perfect. That's the message. But it's a matter of quantity. The number of hours you spend on practicing is determining your performance in later years. But it is not only a matter of quantity; it's also a matter of quality. The way you practice, deliberate practice, as Eriksson and his colleagues emphasize, is a very demanding task. You cannot do that the whole day. You only can work on deliberate practice during a couple of hours, and then you have to do something else. So it's not only in that sense highly demanding, but also the quality is very relevant here. So you must have a strong intention to perform, but you should also tune your practice to your level of expertise and what you already know and master about a particular piece of music. So this tuned practice is important, not just simply rehearsal. Rehearsal is important. It's the last bullet here, but the way you do it is also very important. And arriving at immediate and informative feedback, either provided by the teacher or by recording your performance and interpreting your performance yourself, is very important as well, and it does contribute a lot to the quality of deliberate practice. So this feedback issue is also important. We discussed it already when we went through the work of John Hattie. So these characteristics make the quality of deliberate performance, deliberate practice high, and that's also a contributor to becoming a talented violinist or a talented performer in many other areas as well. So the message is, in fact, that talent is not something with which you are born and which just comes to expression all of itself. The message is that talent is something which has to be developed, and that talent, the ability to become an expert is, as Jan Elshout mentioned it and explained it in one of his papers, the ability to become an expert, that's talent, and not the giftedness as such with which you may have been born. So your strong drive to perform and the number of hours you spend on practicing, they all determine whether you become a gifted performer or a gifted researcher or a gifted teacher or whatever. So you have to spend a lot of effort, and a high quality effort, in order to become to arrive at that level. That's the message of the research on the development of talent. Okay, so now we've come to an end of this module. We have been discussing learning as a social process. We have focused on the issue, the theories and principles of Bandura, Vygotsky, and Bakhtin. We have discussed the issue of cognitive apprenticeship. We went through reciprocal teaching and scaffolding, and discussed the concept of contingency, fading, and transfer of responsibility in a scaffolding environment. We have discussed Kurt Lewin's concept of social interdependence. We have discussed Levin's methods of combining group rewards with individual accountability. We went through cooperative learning. We went through the work of Hattie on feedback. And eventually we also spent some time on the policy issue of diversity in higher education, and also on the development of talent. Now, I definitely hope that by exploring these topics, you have got a feeling of the importance of the social environment for learning, and it may help you to further study issues, particularly when in your own research you encounter them and you want to make use of the knowledge which has been accumulated in this area.